So we're going to start by doing a tension square. I'm working on the Autumn Twist scarf by Drops Designs. This is the one that we're going to do the tutorials on for beginners, and I'm working with Drop Snow. When you buy your yarn, make sure that if you're buying multiple balls of yarn, which you will be for this, that you always get the same dye lot, and the dye lot numbers there. Make sure they're always the same. For me, I have bought 7 of these. If you are a beginner, I would suggest you buy 8, just to be on the safe side. I'm using knitting needles in a 10mm to start a tension square with. And my tension square is written in the instructions. When you go through this, the top one is the hat, the next one down is the scarf. So the hat one is a completely different tension square. When you come down to the scarf, come down and you are doing 9 stitches over 12 rows with a stocking stitch. A stocking stitch is one row of knit, 1 row of purl, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do 9 stitches cast on. So let's get that done. So we've got our yarn. Going to do a long tail cast on again. So we make a slip knot like we did before, make a circle, pop the yarn in the center of the circle and put your knitting needle in, and there's your slip knot. So that is your first stitch. And let's double check, we are doing 9 stitches, so that's 1. Remember how we did it with our thumb? The long tail bit is on the thumb, so we go 1 and then we wrap that over the needle and then we pull that over, and that creates another stitch. So that's 2 stitches, and again 3, and again 4. And we keep doing that. So when you've got the use to that, I would suggest you move on to a slightly different way to holding your yarn, where you'd hold it with your hand like this. The reason is you can do a long tail cast on with one hand, basically just holding the knitting needle in this one. So now I've got 5, so I'm holding it. Can you see how I've got my index finger there and my thumb there? So the index finger is the one with the ball of wool on. This one, thumb, is the long tail. So it's just the same as before. I pop the knitting needle in, but all I do is move my hand over the top of the needle and catch the other yarn, the other side of the yarn that's attached to the ball, and you create another stitch that way. It's just an easy and quick way to do it. So we've got 6, 7, 8 and 9, and there we go. We've got 9 stitches on our knitting needle ready to do the tension square. And like I said, the tension square is a stocking stitch, so we're going to do that now. We're going to go on to a knit stitch. So again, pop the needle in the back, thread yarn around the back between the 2 needles and slide that off. And again, we pop the needle in and push it to the back. Yarn comes over the back between the 2 needles and pull it through. And there we go. That's how we do it. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. These knitting needles are not the best, but they'll do for now. Right, so that was our knit row. We're now going to do a purl row. If you remember how we do the purl, it was slide the needle into the front, make sure the yarn is facing the front of the work towards you, wrap it around the needle at the front and then pull that through at the back this time. So we are literally doing the reverse of what we did before. Knitting needle in the front, yarn between the 2 needles, pull the front needle through and out through the back. And there we go. We slide the stitch off like this. And then that is your purl stitch done. So we're going to do that right the way to the end, and then again we'll come back and do knit. So you alternate your rows, 1 row of knit, 1 row of purl, and we do that until we've done 11 rows, if I remember correctly. So I will double check on that and I'll come back and I'll tell you how many rows you've got to do, but I believe it's 11 rows of alternating knit and purl. Let's see how we get on, and then we'll see how it looks. So I've done my square, I've double checked it. So we have got 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres. It curls slightly at the edges, but that'll sort itself out at the end. So now we've got our tension square done and we know we've got the right size needles. If your tension square is too small, go up a size in needles. If your tension square is too big, go down a size, and then you should get somewhere like, if it's just very slightly out, I wouldn't panic too much because your tension may change as you knit throughout your project. So a couple of key things. This is the right side of your knitting. This is the wrong side when you're working with a stocking stitch. Okay, so the right side is what you may think of as a traditional sort of knit, which it is, because if it's facing you, you're knitting that bit, and the purl side would be the wrong side. So when we're doing this scarf, it's got a lot of purl in it, but the purl is on the right side, but you'll see as we make it what that's like. So things you'll need to make this scarf: the pattern, which I'll put in the link, might be ideal for you to refer back to. Knitting needles, I'm using a 10mm knitting needle. You may need a tape measure of some description just to measure it up as you go along. You will need a cable needle. This one I find the best because as you're working in cable, you slip maybe 2 stitches off, pop them on there while you work on something else at the front or the back, and then you turn the stitches, you'll see as I do it, and then you knit them off of there. So you'll see that when I use it, but one of these cable needles, pretty easy to use. I just find them a bit easier to control the stitches, not a problem. And you will need some way of counting your stitches. It could be one of these, which you can roll around to tell you what row you're on. Could be an app on your phone, your watch, your iPad, whatever, or even a piece of paper where you're just noting it down. Generally speaking, once we get past about I think it's row 10, the pattern is the same throughout for 20 rows. It's 10 rows and then another 10 rows, and then you repeat those 10 rows over and over again. It sounds more complicated than it is. I promise you, you will learn a lot. We'll try and go over things like drop stitches. We'll go over things like going back on your work. Gradually, we'll put it all together. But at the moment, we're just going to start to learn how to knit this absolutely gorgeous scarf. So there we go. Let's give this a try. But there's your tension square done and ready. So now we know what we need to get started on the actual pattern. Okay.